Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing a video. This one might cause a little bit of a ruckus. Probably not as much as certain videos from a couple weeks ago, but nevertheless, I'm going to do this video. And this one, I'm going to be unfortunately bashing one of my favorite artists and singers of the past 10 years or so. I'm going to tell a little story before I do that, though. So, it's only like the past 15 plus years that I've gotten into more of hair metal style bands or glam rock or whatever what you want to call it. And I think it really started with the Scorpions when I was in my early 20s. I got into Uli John Roth, and then later I was like, well, I started to tolerate the 80s Scorpions, and then that led to Dokken because I really like George Lynch, and I got into that stuff, and I kind of held it at that, and maybe the first Rat album or some compilations, and first two Motley Crue. But then what happened in about 2010, 2011 is I decided to venture forth into getting into the band Whitesnake, and there was several reasons for this. So I've always been a fan of Deep Purple's album Burn, which has David Coverdale as the lead singer along with Glenn Hughes on co-lead vocals some of the time. And I was like, well, it can't be that bad with David Coverdale at the helm. You hear all these cheesy commercial songs on the radio all the time. But I heard about John Sykes, and there was a guitarist in my band, one of my former bands, who commented on my Mesa Mark III on how some of the best tones he's ever heard was John Sykes on the self-titled Whitesnake album from '87, or called 1987. So I finally took the plunge and obtained Whitesnake's 1987 album, which I later bought in various editions, honestly. I can show you if you want, because I didn't just obtain it. Yeah. For first, I obtained it, though, of course. So I fell in love with it, especially the songs that weren't as commercial and weren't as played out on the radio. I loved John Sykes' guitar tone. But I already knew that there was a career that David Coverdale had, which was a little less known about. Was after Deep Purple, he formed a band. First, it was called David Coverdale, and then it was called Whitesnake, named after one of his first solo albums. And this band had a totally different lineup than the one on the 1987 album. And they did, was it 6 or 7 albums between 78 and 84, I believe. And so he's always, David Coverdale's always been championing the blues, quote unquote. And in fact, the earlier Whitesnake stuff was very influenced by a lot of different influences like R&B, blues, hard rock, of course, and some proto-metal stuff, because after all, at one point or another, Whitesnake had like about 3/4 or 2/3 of various configurations of Deep Purple in it. Like John Lord, Ian Pace was a member for a while, etc. So did the 1987 album, and he exploded in the hair farmer scene. But recently he came out with these compilation albums of these greatest hits, or remix and remaster and all that. But the latest one is called The Blues. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. So he probably, maybe remixed some of these, these early lineup songs, with Mick Martson and, or just some, Moody and Bernie Martson, and Mick Moody and people like that, Neil Murray, and all these lineups that he had. But no, it turns out it's all newer stuff, except for like a couple songs from his solo album he did in the '90s, and it has everything's past, at least slided in, which is kind of considered the transition into the hair metal thing from the old sound. So just wanted to do a comment on this. I think it's a missed opportunity for him to basically ignore that early lineup, those early lineups of Whitesnake, and put out these compilations that just don't feature hardly anything or anything at all There's not even, you know, uh, Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City. There isn't, you know, anything like that. Anything, just any semblance of the pre 1984 Whitesnake on these compilations, hardly. I mean, I'd have to check all of them, but I believe there's nothing on there. I know there's nothing on this new one, and it's called The Blues. I mean, I think it's kind of ridiculous that he would do this. And you know, maybe it's just these record companies he's working with, and maybe doesn't own the rights or something like that. Or he obtained the rights to the later stuff. I don't know, but I find it pretty just kind of ridiculous. I don't like the name of the album. I think it gives people the wrong impression. You know, he had I'm gonna count how many albums he had before. Yeah, it was like 6 albums and a double live album before Slide It In, but nothing from that. And it's kind of a travesty, you know. You have to those early Whitesnake, you know, they've been reissued several times, but you have to kind of search it out a little bit more than some of these other albums. And you know, I think it is cool that he did the Purple album because he did all this like a lot of old Deep Purple songs. He did these other albums that have these different colors and stuff. It's kind of cool. You know, he had some cool stuff on the Purple album. I think he had some Tommy Bolin stuff too on there, which is kind of weird. But he just ignores the early lineup of Whitesnake, which is ridiculous. I'm actually taking a look at some of these compilations, like this Love Songs. I'm seeing if there's anything pre 1984 on these. I mean, even these, you know, I didn't really like Slip of the Tongue, and I thought Steve Vai was not a good fit for Whitesnake. He was no blues bone in his body. He criticizes John Sykes, but it's like John Sykes has way more blues than Steve Vai ever will. Yeah, there's nothing on there from early on. And the rock album, it's all post Slide It In stuff. So it's kind of ridiculous. I'd suggest anybody that wants to check out early Whitesnake. And my favorite is probably Love Hunter. I love the cover. It's like the most Spinal Tap cover I've ever seen because essentially it's a snake that reveals a certain part of the female anatomy. And I love that album. That's probably my early lineup favorite. I do like I like Saints and Sinners quite a bit. Slide It In, of course, even though that's when Bernie Martin left. But I mean, essentially some of that stuff is like blues rock. You know, it's pretty ridiculous. So that he wouldn't give, you know, he just ignores this early career now, essentially with these compilations. But I don't know if that's on purpose or not. But that's all I got to say.